I need cite no further evidence that the power of concentration is essential to success. You know that it is as well as I do. What you probably are most interested in is, how may I learn to concentrate? I gave you a part of my own version of how to learn to concentrate in the story entitled, The Great Magic Key to Success. Now I shall give you the more scientific explanation of concentration by one of the best-known psychologists in America, Dr. Warren Hilton, in the following words. Before you read what Dr. Hilton has to say, I want you to know that his explanations have the endorsement of such well-known men as the late Professor Hugo Munsterberg of Harvard University, Professor George Trumbull Ladd of Yale University, Professor Knight Dunlap of Johns Hopkins University, and many other noted psychologists and scientists. His explanations are based upon physiological as well as psychological tests made in the laboratory of the Society of Applied Psychology. Concentration, speaking generally, is defined as the act of bringing together at one center or focus. Mental concentration is therefore a focus of the mind upon one object or point. There is nothing abnormal about the sort of concentration to which we refer. Your individual character or personality is made up simply of the progressive results of your trained habits of concentration of attention. Every conviction that you have on any subject, from religion to politics, is the outgrowth of the ways in which you have concentrated your attention. Every conviction thus acquired is wrapped up and stowed away in some thought complex of the past. It is a part of your personality. It will resist, with all the might of its innate energy, the establishment in your mind of any contrary beliefs. The admonitions of a mother may be so implanted in the mind of her boy that all the contrary leanings and impulses will be inhibited. No amount of argument will dispel the faith that religion has fixed in the mind of the true convert. Only the strongest evidence will overcome a man's confidence in the character of an accused friend. Life is made up of experiences, and the influence of every experience upon your conduct and character depends upon the degree of concentration of attention with which it is received. And so every idea in memory has a tendency to direct the mind toward those things that are associated with it in time or place or otherwise, and the extent of its influence depends upon its vividness. Every soft inflection in the well-remembered voice of one you love has a tendency to concentrate the activities of your consciousness upon those things that are associated with the object of your affections. Every advertisement, every shop window display, every prospectus, every businessman's artifice, every salesman's lure, depends for its effectiveness upon the extent of its concentrating influence, the extent to which it is able to bring about a concentration of attention in those to whom it is addressed. The mere presence of an idea in consciousness is not concentration. If you suggest to one that a white mist floating across a meadow is a wraith, the idea will be momentarily active in his consciousness, and yet you may have simply succeeded in directing his ordinary attention to an abstract conception. But if he is a believer in spirits and comes away shaken with terror and convinced that he has actually seen a ghost, then there has been a concentration of his consciousness in a scientific sense. Not every idea presented to consciousness constitutes belief or results in action. In the first instance, the thought of the ghost was active in the man's mind, but other conflicting ideas and impulses were simultaneously present, denying its reality. In the second instance, however, his consciousness was given over wholly to the idea of a ghost that you presented to him. There were present no inhibitory ideas and impulses. He accepted the thought and believed in the reality of it, and, giving free rein to his impulses, he acted accordingly. Concentration, technically interpreted, necessarily implies, then, belief in the idea that is the subject of concentration. And this belief releases the impulses for appropriate muscular responses. How, then, shall we define concentration? Simply thus. Concentration is such a focusing of consciousness upon an idea that if complete it will overcome all conflicting ideas and will result in a belief that will control conduct. When we say complete, we mean that the idea in question must hold undisputed sway in consciousness. When this occurs, the idea will be so assimilated as to become incorporated as a part of the personality. You accept it as truth. You believe in it. This belief becomes an element of your personal ity. It is your own. And so it comes about that efficient concentration necessarily results in belief coupled with such muscular activity as accords with or tends to bring about the realization of that belief. An overmaster conviction and an efficient will are therefore the immediate results of complete concentration. Concentration will be of value to you in two ways. 1. It will give you a minute and specialized knowledge of things and make you an expert in your line. It is related of Agassiz that he used to lock a student up in a room day after day with a turtle's head and not release him until he had learned everything there was to know about it. Some achieved this happy result after months of lonely contemplation. Others never did succeed. The successful ones had formed the habit of concentration. They deserved the title of naturalist, for which Agassiz was fitting them. The unsuccessful ones were forever blotted from the book of honor and life. Learn, then, to concentrate, for without it you can pretend to no real knowledge of anything. This is an age of specialists, and the essence of specialization is the acquiring of a minute knowledge of one thing. Few people realize the immense part that the quality of thoroughness plays in the life of the successful man. The man of millions has generally earned every dollar of his money by doing everything he undertook just a little better than the next man. The average man is superficial. His motto is, to seem, not to be. He is willing to let well enough alone, and has a very modest conception of what well enough is. His competitor needs only a little of the leaven of thoroughness to outstrip him. What you do today is but practice for what you are going to do tomorrow, and if you do whatever you undertake as if your life depended on the issue, your capabilities for greater things will grow in proportion. The fact is that thoroughness is the distinguishing trait of the Superman. And the secret of thoroughness is mental concentration. 2. And this point is much the more important of the two. Concentration, whether you will or not, will necessarily result in your driving ahead with all your energy in pursuit of a given end until your point is gained. The stream of your consciousness is a living current. It is a seething, swirling torrent of activity. Look within and see what is taking place at this moment. You find yourself making resemblances, noting distinctions, associating one thing with another, and selecting and attending to certain ideas, feelings, and impulses while ignoring a multitude of others. This is the thing called consciousness. It is not an aimless current. It does not flow through the hills and valleys of life, adapting itself to the contours of the physical environment. It is a stream that can, if need be, flow uphill. It is consciousness with a will. It is consciousness that labors to preserve you, to promote your free development, and to further your practical success. Make a practice of concentrating upon matters pertaining to a single interest, and you will become absorbed in it as an ideal. You will acquire a standard by which to appraise the value to you of the facts of your life. Make a practice of concentrating upon a single interest, and you will acquire a constant and completely possessing and automatic inhibitory power. You will without thinking refrain from many useless activities. You will refrain from indulgence in pleasures and recreations that would interfere with the accomplishment of your main purpose. You will refrain from wasteful expenditure of your emotions. You will save from a single hour of anger enough energy for a successful day. Make a practice of concentrating upon a single interest, and you will acquire an ideal that will automatically operate the levers of inner control. You will acquire a mental machine operating economically, a well-oiled machine that will work automatically, without friction, without effort, almost without thought. This does not mean that you will be left without the passions that kindle the fires of heroic achievement. Concentration in its highest sense means absorbing, passionate devotion to a cause. It means the state of mind of men whom St. Paul would describe as fervent, literally boiling in spirit. Absolute concentration means the massing of every atom of individual human energy upon a single purpose. It is the acme of efficiency. Commonly your emotions and desires scatter your energies and exhaust you to no purpose. Organize and concentrate these powers, and the only question remaining unanswered is, what goal shall I win? Be a man of concentration, and you will be a man of purpose, with faith in the attainment of that purpose. Be a man of concentration, and you will possess a mental coordination, harmony, and unity that will lift you above petty annoyances and free you from such impediments as moods and restlessness and discontent. Concentrate upon a single purpose. Keep your ideals before you. You cannot then fail to focus all your activities upon the desired end. Only those muscular impulses will find release in actions that are associated with the thought of your desire. Concentrate upon a single purpose, and you will be possessed of an ideal by which to judge the opportunities of your life. You will shrewdly, naturally, and unhesitatingly select those that will contribute to your purpose. You will wisely choose certain pleasures and recreations and discard others. You will have an unerring gauge by which to distinguish luxuries from necessities. Concentrate upon a single purpose, and, often when you least expect it, but surely, the time will come when you will see and grasp your chance and strike in with a winning stroke. This is the law of success. This is what Lincoln really meant, although it may not have occurred to him in just that form, when he said, "I will study and prepare myself, and then someday my chance will come." Would you sway the minds of others? The same principle applies. The man you are to meet is a problem to be solved. Employ the method of Agassiz. Your man has tastes, tendencies, moods, habits, and interests that you must consider. He has animosities, determinations, prejudices, inertias, and resistances that must be taken into account. Like yourself, he is a living consciousness, a creature of impulses and inhibitions. Do not try to batter through his inhibitions. Do not employ coercive methods. Your task is to soothe him into indifference as to all things that tend to inhibit action along desired lines. Do not waste your time in trying to put out of his mind ideas hostile to your purpose. His consciousness is a thing of incessant activity. It must be kept busy. The way to bar out undesirable thought is to fill his mind with other things. Therefore, concentrate his attention upon you and your demands. This done, your cause is gained. You have won the day. Your ability to move things, says Waldo P. Warren, depends largely on where you take hold. I shall never forget the first time I saw the great Ferris wheel, that wonder of two world's fairs. What impressed me most was not its magnitude, but the fact that, in spite of its gigantic size, it required only a comparatively small engine to run it. For unlike most wheels, the power was not applied at the center, but at the circumference, thus utilize the extraordinary leverage of 180 feet. The same force, if exerted at the axle, would have been powerless to move the wheel a single inch. The lever principle is not confined to mechanical things. It is one of the great fundamental ideas which humanity has discovered. When the progress of your campaign is beset with obstacles, whether ignorance, prejudice, injustice, or delay, remember the lever principle. Somewhere there is a move that you can make that will set in motion a chain of events that will even to ally move even the greatest obstacle. Don't strain at the hub of the ponderous wheel. Move a cog that fits into the rim. In influencing others, just as in mastering yourself, the true test of efficiency, the secret of success, lies in the ability to concentrate the attention point. 1. The art of concentration. But how to concentrate? You may say. So far from being able to concentrate the attention of authors, I have never been able to do any concentrating of my own. Be patient, friend. You shall learn the art of concentration. There are methods and devices that, if faithfully employed, put this power within reach of everyone. But first you must realize the wide reach of this mighty weapon. You must know something of the processes and principles underlying its scientific use. We want you to approach these great truths in a spirit of reverence and awe. This not alone because of their intrinsic worth, but also because of their influence in molding the history of men. For the world owes all that is great in religion, in war, in art, in science, in all noble endeavor, to concentration, the concentration of divine talents with unswerving faith upon a lofty purpose. It was concentration that made Alexander master of the world, sighing for more worlds to conquer. It was concentration that made Confucius devote his life through incalculable suffering to great teachings, and made Socrates prefer the cup of hemlock to the repudiation of his principles. It created Zoroaster, farther back than memory. It created Muhammad, the prophet of Arabia. And with its unwavering light came the founder of Christianity, the Nazarene. Here in America, it was concentration that gave us Washington, that inspired Lincoln. It was concentration that built the first steamboat, that invented the cotton gin, that discovered the secret of telegraphy, that made Edison the wizard of electricity. It was concentration that lifted Rockefeller and Morgan to the pinnacles of opulent power. It was concentration, nationwide and based upon an enduring faith, that preserved our national integrity through the fire of internecine strife. In none of these instances was there any deliberate concentration of mental forces. The vast and overpowering desire was in each case brought about by other influences than the action of the individual will. Yet the study and practice of deliberate concentration, of voluntary concentration, of concentration as an art is no new thing. In various guises it has appeared upon the stage of history among all races and nations and in all times since the world was young. The practice of concentration as an art has heretofore always been shrouded in occultism and mystery. This is because its devotees have had merely an empirical knowledge of the subject. They have observed what could be accomplished by concentrative devices and methods, but they have had no comprehension of the reason for the results they observed. Standing back in astonishment at the wonders they were able to work, and unable to explain these occurrences in any rational way, they ascribe the results to miraculous or supernatural agencies. In all ages and in all climes, man has bowed before an intelligent power capable of producing or healing diseases in the human body and capable of bestowing or withholding peace and plenty. The character of this unseen and intangible force has varied with different races of men and different periods of their history. But always and everywhere we find the startling fact that all the peoples of the earth, civilized and uncivilized, have used, and still do use, generically, the same methods of appealing to this invisible power. The Chaldean seer gazed into the eye of a glittering gem until a trance ensued in which he could divine the purposes of the mighty. So did the Egyptian priest, the Persian magi, and the Hindu fakir, all of whom still bring themselves to a trance-like state of fixation of gaze. That strange sect of early Christians known as Tascadrugites accomplished the same results during prayer by looking fixedly at the forefinger held close before the face and point ing at the nose. The monks of the Greek church in the convent of Mount Athos sought freedom from the distractions of a noisy world and entered into communion with the Holy Spirit by gazing steadily at their umbilicus. The fetish worshipper fixes his fascinated eye upon a stick or stone in which dwells for him all power and beneficence. The Anamite gazes with wondering trust at two burning sticks fastened behind the left ear of the magician, who slowly and impressively revolves upon his heel. Charms and idolatrous ceremonies, occult mysteries, and religious practices, witches' incantations and priestly sacrifices, hideous noises and diabolical makeup of the medicine man and voodoo doctor, all are but ways and means devised by men to thwart the efforts of evil spirits and conciliate the good. And all have two elements in common. First, they serve to grip the interest of the faithful one. Having focused his attention, they then direct it toward belief in the realization of a hope. They play it like a calcium light upon the consummation so devoutly wished. All are but different devices for bringing about that mental concentration which we have defined as the overmastering focusing of consciousness upon the belief in an idea. The prayer of pious persons, the yoga of the Hindu, the silence of the disciple of New Thought, the meditation of the philosopher, all find their elements of efficacious truth in this basic principle. From the routine telling of beads of Orthodox Christians to the disembodied soul of the Hindu adept, all are but manifestations and degrees of mental concentration. Consider the occultism of the Hindu now in such vogue. Yoga, literally translated, means concentration. It is used symbolically by the Hindu mystic to signify concentration or union with a supreme being. According to the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, many adepts, in order to be entirely freed from the distraction of bodily sensations, even sacrifice the sense of hearing and the other senses in the fires of restraint. Others, by abstaining from food, sacrifice life in their life. There is no difference in principle between these practices and the self-flagellations of the early monks, the master's 40-day fast in the wilderness, and the asceticism of Simeon Stylites, who passed his life on top of a pillar. All these procedures must be looked upon as devices intended to facilitate mental concentration. Think, now, of the advantage that you possess over other exponents of the art of concentration. You have learned the exact truth in regard to mental operations and processes. You have taken a vast amount of pains in doing so. But now that it comes time for you to apply these principles by devising easy ways for practicing concentration with a view to attaining specific results, you do not have to go groping about in the darkness of occultism and mystery. You know them as realities, as demonstrable truths of modern science. And when you come to make use of these devices, you will not question their efficacy. You will have no doubts as to your success. You will be inspired with the faith that is born of knowledge, as distinguished from the faith that is artificially created by mystic formulas and priestly authority. The faith that knows was the faith of the Son of God. Jesus knew the power of the human spirit. He knew how to heal the sick, how to feed the multitude with but a single loaf, how to confer the peace that passeth understanding. This was the secret of his perfect power. Yet even Jesus required certain conditions for the demonstration of his powers. Even Jesus was unable to perform miracles among the people of Nazareth because of their unbelief. And it was Jesus who, when he had healed a certain sick man, uttered these words of deep scientific significance: "Thy faith hath made thee whole." Faith, belief in the attainment of a desired end, is as essential to success scientifically sought as sought in any other way, because, as you have seen, it sets in motion actual forces. But scientific method possesses 4 exclusive advantages. First, the faith it demands is a faith that all may acquire, because it is a faith that reasoning will create, not destroy. Second, it is a faith that is perfect, because based on judgment. Third, it is a faith that is lasting, because truth is immutable. Fourth, it is a faith that you may deliberately and scientifically acquire, because you now know that faith in a given idea means nothing more nor less than the dominance of that idea in consciousness. So, then, you can achieve nothing without faith. Faith in the ideals on which your attention dwells. And through faith and ideals, and your consecration of them, and your concentration upon them, lies the way for you to acquire inner control, to escape wasteful moods and emotions, to master your inner geese, to become efficient in the highest sense, and to the last degree. Point 2. You now have Dr. Hilton's version of concentration. I have found his explanations practical and entirely in harmony with my own discoveries. Vocational guidance has not yet become a universally accepted science, but this does not preclude a person from using common sense in selecting a vocation. The trouble is, too many people act on a hunch. If you are engaged in work in which you are not succeeding, take inventory of yourself and see if you cannot locate the trouble. The chances are that you can. Just apply common sense in selecting your life's work. You may not be able to analyze yourself as well as a man who has had many years of experience. Therefore, if you have any doubts, place yourself in the hands of someone who is experienced in analyzing men. He will undoubtedly see your weak spots more quickly than you could. Few of us can be our own best critics because we are inclined to overlook our weaknesses or place too little importance on them. There are but few, if any, ironclad rules to follow in the selection of a vocation that would apply in every case. Probably these come as near as being applicable in all cases as is possible. Be sure you love the vocation you adopt. Be sure you are enthusiastic about it and that you intend to stick with it. Be sure you are prepared, educationally, for the work you select. Be sure the vocation is one in which you render a service that is beneficial to humanity. Be sure the work is permanent. Be sure that it is work that will not impair your health. We come to the last, and probably the most important, subject of all, namely, how to get what you want. It is through the discussion of this subject that I shall try to show you how to make application of the principles covered up to this point. Selecting the right vocation would mean nothing to you unless you knew how to develop that vocation through the proper use of the principles herein set out and explained. I am writing at length on this subject because the research that I have done in my work as a personal analyst has shown me how sadly lacking the average person is in the knowledge concerning the principles that I shall maintain. Without a fair understanding of these principles, what I have written up to this point would be practically useless. The most stupendous problem confronting the human race today is the question, how can I get what I want? In the business office, on the streetcars, in the home, in the city, and on the farm, in America and all over the world, wherever men and women congregate, the conversation drifts to this great subject. Probably the most vitally important knowledge that I have gained from my research as an analyst is this law of nature of which I shall write, and through the application of which you can get whatever you want. Obviously, there are more ways than one to get what we want, but it is just as obvious to the well-balanced, thinking person that there is only one correct way, and my purpose is to point out this correct way in the simplest words at my command. Who am I that I should set myself up as an authority on such a momentous question? I answer that I am only one of the many thousands who have discovered this principle of which I am writing by first having tried out its opposite in the crucible of life and finding it wanting. I am only one of the thousands who have wrested this secret from the great mass of human effort that we call experience, most of which was for many years misdirected and out of harmony with the purpose of life. I am only relating that which thousands of others have learned at a most appalling cost, in heartaches and disappointments, relating it with the hope that your pathway in seeking that which you want may be a little smoother, a little more pleasant, as a result of what I have written in my humble way. I am positive that the principle, nay, let me call it the law of nature, with which I shall acquaint you is scientifically correct and that it offers the only desirable route to that which you want. The reason I am so sure of this is the fact that for more than 15 years I exerted every effort at my command to deny this principle and to reach my desired goal without making use of it. So this is why I have presumed to present my viewpoint. In presenting it, I am doing it neither for profit nor for the purpose of trying to entertain you. I am presenting it for your use for the sole reason that I am only happy and successful in proportion to the extent that I help others become happy and successful. In calling your attention to this simple law, let me tend to explain that I lay no claim to its original discovery. This law is as available to one person as it is to another, and furthermore, it has been available to us all ever since the world began. I make this explanation so you will not accuse me, in the silence of your heart, of the unpardonable act of trying to clothe a great law of nature in occultism, or of an attempt to present this principle as a man-made product. Electricity has given the world a problem to contend with for ages. It was and still is a force, an energy of which we know comparatively little. At one stage of the world's evolution, we shrank away from the lightning in the clouds and believed it was sort of evidence of God's wrath toward ignorant humanity. But Franklin was no skeptic. Neither was he a fanatic, and being open-minded, a thinker and a student of nature, he sent up his kite with a key tied to it and thus got into communication with that energy that most other people of his time didn't understand and were afraid of. Then came Edison, and by discovering some of nature's laws and adapting himself to them, he harnessed electricity and made it light our houses, turn our machinery, and pull our trains. Edison didn't invent electricity. He merely discovered how to make use of a law which anyone before him could have made use of had he adapted himself to it. And so it is with this law of nature, through the operation of which you can get that which you want. In explaining this law, I shall show you how to get what you want through its use. But there is one thing I cannot tell you, and that is what to want. Now as to this great principle, let me quote the following from one of the world's leading authorities, a man who probably discovered the principle just as I did, by and through an exhaustive research in life's laboratory. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought, in this substance, produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and, by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. In order to do this, he must form a clear mental picture of the things he wants, and do, with faith and purpose, all that can be done each day, doing each separate thing in an efficient manner. Point 3, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The words quoted above state the entire principle about which I am writing. Or, stated in another familiar quotation in the words of the world's greatest psychologist, "Whatsoever ye soweth, that shall ye also reap." If there is the slightest doubt in your mind that something must first be created in your mind before it can be created elsewhere, I implore you to dismiss that thought before you are caught and permanently held in that great maelstrom of skepticism, doubt, and lack of faith in the simple laws of nature, which have enmeshed so many human beings who fail to get what they want. I say that to those who fail to get what they want, but upon reflection, I seriously doubt that such a thing is possible as one failing to get what one really wants. Right here is a fine line to be drawn and kept in mind. Namely, there is a great deal of difference between merely wishing for a thing and wanting it with all your heart and soul, wanting it so much that you make up your mind that you are going to get it, no matter what effort may be necessary, and then proceed to get it. Right here is the danger point, the place where the average person loses contact with an understanding of this great law. The truth of the matter is that you are either consciously or unconsciously getting that which you think about most intensely. That is something you will do well to remember. I consider this point so important that I feel it my duty to digress from my subject for just a moment while I explain that you are reading, not the words that have fallen from the pencil of a religious fanatic, but the words of a fairly well-balanced businessman, a man who has tasted rather liberally of both poverty and riches, a man who has probably gone through just such experiences as you yourself have faced. I make this explanation for the reason that 15 of my 20 years of business experience were failures, not because I couldn't avail myself of the information that I am passing on to you, but because I looked upon all attempts to expound this principle as emanating from impractical, distorted, and more or less unbalanced minds. I now know better, and the pity of it all is that I have lost 15 years, probably 1/5 of my entire allotment on this earth, before discovering my mistake. I say to you without qualifications that you will be forced to accept the truth of this simple law before you can expediently attain any desirable position in life. Therefore, I trust that I can help you extricate yourself from the mass of entangling thoughts that may now be holding you away from the desirable things of life. This message, then, is just a simple message from a plain businessman who has found himself, and who not only knows that he has found himself, but who knows exactly how he found himself and desires to point out the way to you. Now, before we proceed with the subject, let's again state this principle or law in nature in plain, concrete words that cannot be misunderstood. Everything that we create in physical form must first be created in thought. Thoughts that we concentrate our minds upon will, in time, reproduce themselves in physical form. We grow to resemble the thoughts which we dwell upon most. That is the principle, stated in the simplest words at my command. Now let us apply the principle and see how it worked out in at least one authentic, concrete case, when it was consciously made use of. We are always making use of this principle, but most of the time we use it unconsciously and through its operations defeat our own purpose. The value to you of this principle will depend largely upon whether you learn to use it consciously, in an organized way, or unconsciously, without understanding it. Remember, the only thing lightning ever did before it was harnessed was to frighten people, and now and then, kill someone. It is the same with the principles of which I am writ ing. They may act as a boomerang to destroy you unless you harness them and apply them consciously and in an organized manner. The concrete example that I shall make use of is this, and I use it because I know it to be authentic. For nearly a score of years, a very close personal friend of mine wanted to accumulate money, a desire that I presume you also have had at times. I say he wanted money, but in reality I believe he merely wished for it, because he gave but little thought as to what he would give in return or as to just how he would proceed in getting money. He was trying to reap a harvest of money without sowing a crop of useful service to humanity. Therefore, he was out of harmony with nature's law, whatsoever ye soweth, that shall ye also reap. At about the end of the 18th of those 20 years, he came to an understanding of this principle, and during the last 2 of the 20 years, he has created not only part of the money he desired, but he has discovered the greatest of all discoveries, namely, how to be happy. He wanted to get money so he might be happy and help to make heirs happy, but his thoughts were centered on the effect, and he thereby overlooked the cause through which to create that effect. During those 18 years, he devoted most of his time to thinking and creating means through which to get possession of what others had already created, and instead of succeeding, his thoughts came back like a boomerang and defeated his purpose. Why? Because he had been concentrating his entire mind on defeating others, and in doing so he created defeat, but for himself. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. He thought of defeat and was defeated. He made the wrong use of autosuggestion because he didn't understand it. Autosuggestion is a wonderful power that you are using either consciously or unconsciously in getting what you want, but I warn you that it is a power that may bring about your downfall if you make the wrong use of it. I said I would tell you how to get what you want, but the responsibility of deciding what you want must rest upon your shoulders. Proceed in this way. When you have made your decision, create a clear outline of the thing you have decided to do or the person you have decided to be, write out a description of it, and memorize this description. After you have memorized it, you must make use of the power of autosuggestion and affirm to yourself and to heirs, if you choose, that you are going to create or acquire the thing you have decided upon. Make this affirmation at least a dozen times a day, preferably by stating in forceful words addressed, if necessary, to an imaginary person. Now, let me caution you again to be very careful to see that you do not make the mistake of choosing to create or acquire that which you will not desire after you get it. This principle does not discriminate. It brings you what you order. For many years I desired to become a successful writer. A writer on what subject? Oh, any old subject. It made no difference so long as I could see my name in print as an author. It hadn't occurred to me until recent years that writing is but the outward expression of inward feelings, and that before anything worth reading can come out, something worth reading must go in and be recast from the crucible of the human heart. I make this unqualified statement, that you can attract to you, nay, that you will attract to you, the very things or the very station in life that you create in your thoughts. Choose wisely, then, the material that goes into those thoughts. Go a step further and organize your thoughts by drawing a very clear and definite mental picture of the thing you wish to acquire or of the person you wish to be, and then concentrate on that picture until you transform it into a physical reality. You now understand the principle of concentration. Therefore, make use of it. Just in proportion to the extent that your mental picture is clear and complete, will your material realization of it be clear and complete. Remember, then, that to merely wish for a thing now and then is neither clear nor complete. Go a step further, and through the power of strong desire paint a picture of what you want that is so definite and clear that none, particularly yourself, can mistake it. This principle applies to the accumulation of every material thing on earth and to the creation of every state of mind. Through its use we can be happy or unhappy, prosperous or poor, just as we choose. Every principle that I have herein recommended has been tried out and proven practical and scientifically correct. Through the students of the George Washington Institute, I have seen these principles work remarkable results, in some cases almost instantly. In fact, the principles which I have herein mentioned form the very warp and woof of what we term the idealistic portion of the course in advertising and salesmanship taught by the Institute. That is, that portion of the course through which we develop in the student a magnetic and pleasing personality, without which a mastery of the mere technique or mechanics of advertising would be almost useless. It is no secret among those who are familiar with the policy under which the George Washington Institute is conduct that its worldwide popularity is due entirely to the fact that it has applied from the beginning the principle herein mentioned. There really is no mystery in the fact that within the short period of 1 year, the George Washington Institute, through the application of these principles, and without $1 in capital to start with, created a business that has almost encircled the earth. A business that has accomplished more in a year than any other correspondence school ever accomplished in 5 years during the beginning stage. This is not a boast for the George Washington Institute. The Institute doesn't need it, but merely another concrete proof that these principles are commercially sound. A few years ago, I tried in vain to get one of the largest correspondence schools in Chicago to teach at least one of these vitally fundamental principles, but its owners declined my offer with the statement that these principles were too idealistic for our use. This school evidently believed that a part of my plans was not too idealistic, however, for it stole bodily my idea. I mention this incident, not in a spirit of vindictiveness, but only for the purpose of making the point that the wrong application of a correct principle will not succeed, neither will it prove that principle to be impractical or incorrect, and also to make the point that success cannot be attained by merely applying a part of one or more of these principles. No, I feel no animosity toward the owners of the school because they tried to steal my plans. To do so would be the equivalent of permitting these misguided gentlemen to pull me down to their level, and in that event I would be directly violating one of the most important of the principles I have mentioned. If a man steals your idea, let him alone with it, for he will soon hang himself with it. Spend no time hating such a man because you are damaging yourself and not him. Remember that your thoughts are building your personality. Therefore, be careful as to what sort of thoughts go into that building. The last thought that I shall leave with you is this. The degree of the bigness or littleness to which a person has risen may be very accurately determined by ascertain the extent to which that person can forgive and forget the wrongs which have been heaped upon him. Show me a person who has enough self-control to refrain from joining the chorus when he hears someone who has done him injustice being picked to pieces by his gossiping neighbors, and there I will show you a person who has made at least the first step toward greatness. Forbear and forgive. Forget forever, if you would be considerate of your own welfare and happiness. Remember the words of the world's greatest philosopher, "If any among ye is without sin, let him cast the first stone." An attractive and magnetic personality is essential for success in any worthwhile undertaking. If the principles that I have mentioned are correct, a person can be neither attractive nor magnetic as long as he harbors hatred in his heart. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and share.